Good evening and good morning, Unicorn fan. Welcome to the CryptoUnicorns Town Hall number 41 with Aaron Barishman, CryptoUnicorns CEO and co-founder. So many things have happened in such a short time. Wow, it's such a busy week. I will keep my intro short so we can spend all of our quality time with Aaron, who's always ready to spill the tea and spread the hype with Aaron's updates. Good morning, Aaron. How are you doing?
Fantastic as always. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful intro, Sparkly.
Gotcha.
All right, let's get to it. I'm going to focus on a few key points and then we'll roll right into questions today. Starting with QE. When we started QE, it's important to remember the purpose was to increase liquidity for Unum and remove Unum from supply by effectively locking it into the LP pool. When we started, the Treasury owned about 12% of the circulating supply of Unum. And at the conclusion of QE, we own 48%, roughly 110 million of the 230 million in circulating supply. Keep in mind, at nearly 50,000 babies, you need 325 million Unum to simply evolve the babies that we have today. Our current circulating supply of the token is 230 million. Our other option would have been to simply mint Unum and pair it with USDC and put it in the pool. Instead, we chose to invest in our own economy by purchasing Unum from the players. And I know there are people on both sides of the fence here, both sides of the debate. At the end of the day, that's the direction that we chose, and I stand behind it. I do agree with what many have said, that the timing was off. Obviously, we expected growth via a number of attempts since we started QE. And as a result of not seeing growth during that period of time, or I should say significant growth during that period of time, it didn't have the ultimate effect that I intended. Based on what I said at the beginning, though, I don't believe it was a failure in any way, shape, or form. It certainly just didn't achieve the goals that I had hoped to achieve. And the last thing I'll say on QE, unless you guys have questions about it later, is I do apologize for how I dropped the news. We'd announced publicly many times that it would end at the end of Q2. I should have been more tactful with that announcement. Forgive me, I'm a human being, and sometimes I come into Discord and I see people mashing keyboards, and I just did a mic drop. Wasn't appropriate. You live and you learn. On to the market makers, our favorite friends right now. Let's start up. I want to start with the setup, I guess, right? So Flowdesk is the market maker that we work with for RBW. They're a software as a service platform, in that this isn't some deal where we've loaned them tokens and they've got some call option or anything like that. We pay them a monthly fee. They market make the tokens on the centralized exchanges and the DEX. We then use Gecko, another company, for the NFTs. So starting with Flowdesk and the shit show that was the BitGet launch, my understanding is that effectively Flowdesk did not do a good job of managing the dumping of RBW that occurred on the BitGet exchange with the launch of the token. Instead of simply just buying back what was being dumped on the SEX, they actually sold some on Balancer on the decentralized exchange to bring price into parity. In our view, this is obviously very stupid, given we kind of expected this to occur. Side note, centralized exchanges typically ask for a marketing budget in tokens. They hand these tokens out to their users. You probably saw this on Twitter, and they typically get dumped. In addition, sometimes the BD people that we have to deal with take a fee, basically cut a bonus in these tokens, and they dump. If this sounds like a racket, it's because it is. It's very unfortunate that we have to mess with this, but it is kind of the way the industry works. It's sticky, it's nasty, and I hate it. It is necessary to deal with some of these tier 2 exchanges. Obviously, to go from Bitsy, a top 30 exchange roughly, to BitGet, which is a top 10 exchange by volume, is like we're stepping up the tree. Ultimately, we care about a handful of exchanges at the top. I'm sure you can imagine what those exchanges are. And it's important to show that we are getting listings elsewhere along that path. So that's kind of the Flowdesk mess. We've had a number of conversations with them. I do not anticipate we'll run into issues like this in the future with additional listings. On the Gecko front, on the NFT front, I don't know why. No one really knows why. They kicked off the strategy the way that they did. They didn't even announce to us that they were doing it, so it even caught us by surprise. Taking a step back to give the simple answer here, what we've realized across both the market makers is we need to stop assuming that they are the experts and simply be directive to them. We have done so in follow-up conversations with them both. We will continue to monitor their efforts. And I will state publicly that they are both on the bubble in my mind. And if they fail again, we'll be looking at other options on that front. So I'll end it there. Happy to answer more questions as people have them. On to marketing. Yesterday, I let our director of marketing go. In this case, I failed to hire the right person. We've certainly attempted many things. You've seen the marketing decks, you've seen the videos that we produced talking about the campaigns that we've been running and the experiments that we've been testing across various channels. At the end of the day, we've attempted many things, but I'm not sure they were the right things. And certainly in the face of the KPIs, they were not the right things to do. And I think it boils down to this individual did not embrace the space, the Web3 space specifically, the crypto Twitter degen space specifically. And I'm now elevating people internally who do. Ultimately, these decisions are tough. When I let our CMO go prior to hiring this director of marketing, I needed to find somebody quickly. And I definitely took a bet on a person that had clear experience in free to play and real money gaming, hoping that they would kind of bridge the gap into Web3. They didn't. And this is just the reality of y'all being along for the ride as we try to build a startup and the chances we take as we hire people quickly looking to scale. At the end of the day, you can expect a rebooted plan soon. I don't think it will be much of a surprise to any of you who've been certainly willing to share a lot of feedback on this front. You're going to be seeing us double down on the few things we did see work and lean much harder into crypto Twitter, capturing the natives that remain in the space, remain committed to the vision and ethos of the space, and are certainly bought in and red pilled. If I can encapsulate the new direction in a slogan, it would be embrace the degen. Shadowcorn spray paint. In other news, it's great to see the App Store's loosening guidance on NFT-based games. The path is certainly becoming clearer and clearer. When we launched the game last year in May, keep in mind, they were still entirely banned. So the progress in just over a year, I hope, is a sign of much brighter days to come for the space. Getting access to the mobile platforms and 1 billion plus, technically billions of players, is the right way, and has been a barrier for this space for a long time. So I do think this is a sign of good things to come. As a result, we are pivoting the Unicorn Party launch strategy towards submission to Google Play. We're also going to be submitting the WebGL version to a launcher partner that I'm excited to announce in the coming weeks as a part of this big partnership I've been working on for many months. After the Google Play launch of Unicorn Party, we'll absolutely begin proceeding with the Apple App Store. Reading the guidelines, the path for Unicorn Party in both stores is clear to me based on the current guidance. I don't expect that we'll have problems with that listing submission. The core game, it's a little less certain. Apple still does not allow fungible token trading like we have in our game, period, right? So the hope there is Apple continues losing legal battles with Epic, coupled with pressure now that Google Play has become more favorable. Hopefully Apple loosens its guidelines on that front and gives us a clear path on that side. Even Google Play for the core game, it's uncertain, right? They definitely mention NFTs. They are very careful to not say fungible token. They do say tokenized assets in kind of a vague way. And so I'm cautious there. We've been burned before by these stores, but it is definitely a good sign. Obviously, we are mobile game devs that pivoted into WebGL out of necessity when we pivoted into this space. And so the plan has always been to return to mobile, but you need to set your expectations appropriately on that front, especially with Apple. They do not move very quickly, and as the most valuable company in the world, frankly, they could give a fuck about our space. So it's going to take time, but the recent news is incredibly positive in this brutal bear market we've been in. So I do think it's going to be positive for us. And obviously, Unicorn Party charts the path. We learn what doesn't work, what works and what doesn't work with a game that isn't our primary core game, and then that will clear the path for the core game, assuming we don't have to restrict the things that actually make it special and Web3. I'll end quickly on a fun note. The Shadowcorn merch claim vouchers are finally getting distributed next week. The damn toys have been done for a while. The boxes got shipped and have been there for a while. The final piece is QA on the claim site, where you burn your NFT voucher, kind of Unisoc style, put in your shipping information, and obviously pay for shipping, the asset, of course, we paid for. So that piece has been the final piece. You can say, why has this been taking so much time? Like, just go look at Ism Toys on Twitter, look at their website. It's a small mom and pop vendor that pivoted into the space, was doing stuff for Bored Ape Yacht Club, bit off probably a little more than they can chew across the board with our project. And it's just kind of been the result of that. There's only so much we can do when it's really not our team. I do think we'll take this lesson learned into future merch and figurine partnerships, which I'm actively pursuing at this point, and take this as a bit of a lesson learned. I appreciate everyone's patience on this front, and I think as you start to get these figurines, hopefully it begins to reinvigorate excitement. And ironically enough, the timing is kind of perfect with the upcoming launch of Minion Forge, as well as the kickoff of the long-awaited Shadowcorn arc on the roadmap. All righty, Sparkly, I'm ready for questions. Tough questions, please.
All right, today is going to be spicy. To add on to that, by the way, the CM team will be releasing the list of all the figure recipients either today or tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. We will share it on the Shadowcorn Holders channel. Okay, let's get by the rules really quickly. We have a 3 questions per person rule. If a question has been answered previously, you'll have to ask something else. Any questions related specifically to your account or a Zendesk issue, please reach out to us on the mod support channel. CM team can take care of that for you. To ask a question in voice, please press the request to speak button. The button looks like a raised hand. You can queue up at any time. Once we accept your request, you'll see a green bar at the top of your Discord. Click accept to begin speaking. We also have written questions. It's on the Town Hall Bulletin Forum channel. Take note that we prioritize spoken questions over written ones. But before we start with that, let's have the anonymous questions. We have our 5 entries right here. They're all very long. Let's go. Okay, question number 1. These past few days, I observed that the demand for unicorns in the market is decreasing, and this makes the floor price also decrease. The scenario has happened in other Web3 games and make the value of the NFT go close to 0. How can you prevent this type of cycle in Web3 games again? What are your plans to balance the demand for players? Yeah, that's a question.
Trying to think about what angle I want to approach this from. Profile pick projects as a starting point are stupid, because how do you take 10,000 assets and scale it to 1 billion people, right? We're making a game that you utilize the assets in, and we need a system by which 1 billion people one day can play this game, and everyone needs at least a corn to play, right? We have 150,000 corns bred. The floor price is a function of supply relative to demand. So y'all continue to breed. Demand is not there. Y'all have all seen that demand. Naturally, you're going to see price come down, right? If you actually take a second to look beyond floor price, we have a lot of depth in our pricing, given the higher stat unicorns and, of course, the mythic rarities of unicorns. So that's very interesting. I think, again, I hate profile pick projects. I think they've been one of the most detrimental things to happen in the space. And the fact that they kicked off the wave set a lot of really terrible expectations in people. One being this idea that floor price is just naturally going to go up forever. On a 10K collection that does not expand, if demand continues to increase, yes. But how are those projects faring today? Terribly. And they're all happening, they all happen to be pivoting in some form or another into games, which I think we all need to identify as interesting and potentially good for us, right? So we started as a gaming project. So, you really have to ask yourself, well, what would the price, if we have 1 billion corns for 1 billion players, what would the price of the corns be? I don't know. Should it be $1? Should it be 10? Should it be 15? Are 1 billion people going to pay $10 for a corn? I don't know. I have no idea. Mythic rarities and things like that. You look at people like Gibberson, who continues to get some world first on his breeding and attempts to get, he's so close to a legendary, the first legendary mythic to occur, which is insane in, 150,000 breeds to, we're nowhere close to even filling out all the classes in terms of quad mythics, right? So we built this system that forced you to invest in the economy via breeding and evolution, and it obviously has rewarded the players that chose to specialize in that, given they have the highest stat assets and the most rarity in terms of mythics, right? Or the highest rarity in terms of mythics. So there's something interesting about that system, right? Where if you look at the floor price of the higher tier assets, they've certainly done a lot better overall than the farm corns. And at the end of the day, you need a bunch of farm corns. So there's this weirdness, and I just despise the idea that if you're focused purely on floor price, you're not even thinking about how we expand the collection over time to get more players on board. 1 billion people are not going to spend $1,000 per unicorn, right? The hope is a whale will spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for a high tier mythic or high stat corn, right? But that's not going to be applied broadly to the collection. There are certain things that are finite. Shadow corns are finite. There are only ever going to be 3,000 of those. Land is ultimately finite. 1 million lands sounds like a lot, but on the scale of a successful mobile game, right? Like 100 million plus people playing Farmville, right? Not enough land to go around as we scale, right? So you have to really think about your strategy in this game. And if you're sitting here just complaining about overall the underlying floor price of the assets continue to go down, it's going to ultimately need demand to change that. We've said before, and this is a part of the Shadowcorn arc of the roadmap, like we intended from the beginning to put deflationary mechanisms on the unicorn supply. Shadowcorns are one of those mechanisms. Unicorns dying in the Dark Forest is going to be one of those mechanisms with the Dark Forest Act 2. An unannounced but very exciting system that is going to let you enhance your current unicorns will also be a deflationary mechanism where you will need to effectively spend soul crystals in that mechanic. So our responsibility is to try to balance the economy. Ultimately, price across all of our assets is simply a factor of supply and demand. We have had this challenge from the beginning, is supply has continued to increase and demand has not. And so there's always a balance that we have to play, or a balancing act that we have to attempt, which is, well, in the absence of new demand, we've got to deflate the supply. Will the Shadowcorn roadmap itself deflate supply enough to increase price? I don't know. I have no idea. Ultimately, we need more demand. We're at a few thousand players, 10K holders, right? You have to ask yourself, is there an opportunity in the next year with the next cycle for us to scale to 50,000? And what do things look like there? How many unicorns do we need at that point, right? If a couple thousand players are actively utilizing over 100,000 corns per day. Like, again, the thing that I promised from the beginning is that we would have enormous economic depth and breadth within this system. And we have delivered that. Demand is an issue. It remains a challenge, not just for us, but for others in the space. And it is definitely something that is my top priority, right? So I'm happy to answer follow-up questions around that, but it's to summarize, it's like, well, demand is certainly a factor, and we have deflationary mechanisms coming as a tool to help further balance the overall supply. But all of you have to be thinking about, well, to scale to more players, we need more corns, and the entry price into the game, if the entry price to the game is going up, you're not going to scale. The entry price actually needs to remain either stable or potentially even decrease, especially if we look at scaling to the point where players in tier 2 markets and things can purchase their own assets, right? And maybe delegation is this half step with the ship of the feature that begins to get that flywheel going. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the short term that I think will positively affect this. But you need to be thinking beyond just floor price and start to ask yourself questions around, how do we scale this to more players? What is the right entry point into the game? Is it okay for the floor price of donkeys to continue to slide as long as the higher tiers and the mythic rarities are going up or remaining more stable? Obviously, there are certain aspects of our economy, like shadow corns and land, that have finite numbers that are designed to attract players that are more interested in owning a collection that is finite. I'll leave it there. And by the way, Sparkly, I have unbounded time. I know I'm taking long with these, but judging sentiment in Discord and some of the keyboard arguments I've had with people, I want to take the time during this town hall. So let's not rush it, all right?
All right, you heard it, Unicorn fam. So if you want to ask a question, this is the best time. If you have something that you're talking about in serious or in general, anything at all, please feel free to reach out, type that out here, hop up on the stage. Speaking of hopping up into the stage, we have Truth coming in. Please come on over.
How's it going? Thanks for inviting me up. Thank you all for being here. I'll get right into it. One of my main concerns is the daily active users. I know that we have a great product. I've been here from the start and seen it grow, and that in itself has been, a fun project for me. I'm not, I'm into gaming, but I haven't been part of a project that has been from the start and watched it grow like Unicorns here. And I know that there's a lot of talk of getting other tribes and, trying to take from Axie and trying to take from these other gaming communities. But obviously with marketing not really hitting the mark, and daily active users kind of stagnant at this moment, and the game's been released for at least a year. I know that we have a lot of fun stuff coming, and I enjoy it all. Like I like the uncertainty, I like the new metas, I like kind of the lore, the design. I think it's all great. But can you maybe speak a little bit more to what the plan is to get that number of daily active users up? If there's a timeline, if there's KPIs that you want to hit, and if you don't hit those, like what is the pivot, I guess, for not hitting those marks, or can you give us some kind of timeline? Ultimately,
for sure,
that scaling talk of once we hit 50,000 users or there's 1 billion users is all great ideas for how to potentially scale, but feel like the actual scaling and actual daily active users is a little bit concerning on my end.
No, for sure. And to be clear, me throwing out numbers like 50K and 1 billion are not plans to scale. That was more from the perspective of, you have to think about what the collection looks like to get there and how many corns we need and what the entry price should be. And like, you really have to think through some of those more complicated things beyond if you just have an expectation that like floor prices are supposed to go up infinitely. That's just insane in this space, right? And it won't happen with an inflationary supply asset. We can do things that are going to balance it out, right? And so anyway, setting that aside, getting to your question, the growth, I mean, obviously the pivot is, I laid someone off yesterday. We're radically shifting the plan towards a refocus on embracing the degen and trying to get the people within the crypto space today who have largely ignored us to finally begin to pay attention. And I do think the crux of that is the introduction of the shadow corn arc itself, the war in the dark forest, and ultimately tribes. I've kind of said this many, many times. I'll say it again. An infinite progression button mashing farm sim was never going to be sustainable. We launched it as the MVP into everything that we've built on top of it. And ultimately, this shift into tribes, which I know some people don't like because they like coming in and mashing buttons and dumping RBW and getting a certain return as a result of that. Like, we're going to, with this shift to tribes and the shadow corn arc, begin to create conflict. And that conflict will be a fight over the rewards that the game economy puts out. And it will force you into cooperative, strategic gameplay to achieve reward and to, ultimately rank and win, right? And so this shift from farm game to land gameplay, and we're going to start killing unicorns and stuff, is like, to me, this radical shift. And we need to make sure with the shift, this idea of embracing the degen, that we begin to lean more into the crypto Twitter space. I mean, it's not lost on me the number of times people said, I don't see enough. And like, we post a shitload. We have decent followers relative to, in particular, newer projects in the space, right? There are a few projects that have more followers than us, but I recognize what people are saying is like, we need to be a part of the conversation on crypto Twitter, and we have not been. And part of that is a challenge in that I do not go out and hype and shill. I am not going to be the person you see in videos doing fucking shoeies, right? Like, I'm just not. I'm sorry. If you want a founder that's going to go out and do shoeies, like, go buy you a D-Gods, go buy you a Utes. And it's just not my style. And it's unfair of me as the founder to put this on people like Andrew, who have way larger followings and stuff. And of course, he promotes us and things of that nature. But I recognize what people have been saying. We need to be a part of the conversation. And it remains. When Azuki can sell $30 million worth of PFPs in today's market, effectively shitting on their own community with this crap that they've done, like, we should be able to get out there and speak to what we've built and everything that we have planned and everything we've proven to date. And again, the thing that I promised from the beginning that we have achieved is this massive amount of economic depth and breadth. And with new demand, things are going to move in the right direction quickly. So I keep teasing this massive partnership. Companies larger than us move very slow. And it has taken forever. It's something that I've worked on since February. Go ahead.
Yeah, do you mind if I interrupt, just because there's a lot of points there that I wanted to maybe expand on?
For sure.
And feel like I'll forget them if I don't interrupt for a second. So, the shadow corn lore and all of these things, and the depth and the growing and the new mechanisms and things all, speak to kind of the depth of the game, and that's great. But without coordinated marketing and getting these things out there, it seems like you guys spend a ton of time thinking about the scaling and the overall economy, but if it's only going to be known to the people that are currently playing the game, what's the point of, if someone comes in, a month after Shadowcorn launches all of the lore and everything, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, like, that's been how it is forever. Like, they miss the entire, hey, this is a huge shift in the game, here's more depth, here's more of this. So, like, people coming into the game for the first time, or you know, they're not going to have the same passion as a lot of us do. And I think you might, this is just my opinion, could be totally wrong as well, but you're missing a lot of, you know, potentially gaining daily active users by not putting this out there almost more than focusing on the scaling, right? The scaling will eventually evolve and things like that, but if you're not putting
Well, let me ask you this, the truth.
yeah,
What do you mean by putting it out there? Because we announce all of this shit on Twitter. We announce this on our Medium, right? Our Twitter account remains blocked. We have talked to them many times. We pay for that damn premium because of the word
Right.
crypto. I can't. So I need you to tell me what you see as where are we not putting this out and where could that message be better received to grow players? I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. I know that the Twitter does put out, you know, I follow and I have notifications set for the CU Twitter, and I see stuff being put out and it gets 4 or 5 likes. Maybe the method for putting it out there isn't to promote it on necessarily our own Twitter. Like maybe that's not the place to be. Obviously put it out there as well, but the idea should be getting people who are massive in the Twitter space, in the crypto Twitter, you know, friendly with Wab from Seals, you know, like make it into something that we're going to be partnering with some of the major projects. We're going to be getting into Twitter Spaces with some.
I mean, but we did partner with these major projects, right? Whether it was Pirate Nations, Decentral Games, right? Like you've seen these things, right? Like we have done these things and they're not leading to inflections in growth. What I said and where you and I are aligned is we need to be a part of the conversation on crypto Twitter. And that's what I mean in terms of what you're saying, where like the influencers and other people outside of it, not the shillfluencers who are bullshit. We've already paid some of them and they fail. They do not drive meaningful growth, but we need other project founders talking about us. We need other people with followings that were built more organically and less around shilling crap to be talking about us. You know, I think I need to be in the AMAs or the town or the Twitter spaces where the NFT degens are hanging out. So we're in agreement there, right? I think it's, you know, y'all not liking and retweeting our things hurts us. And if I have to incentivize y'all to do that, I don't know why the hell anybody is here. Y'all have this inherent incentive to go out and do more. I'll ask you this question. I don't know why Wolf Game has like 15 different people that write all these great threads and promote it all the time. I do not believe the vast majority of them are being compensated. And at the end of the day, we all have this massive alignment of incentives to push this project forward. And if you are all exclusively relying on us to do that, we are going to fail. So we run TikTok campaigns. We have run Instagram campaigns. We have run Facebook campaigns, right? So it's also, that was kind of my point earlier. We've attempted a lot of things. They're not necessarily working. I care about getting the multiple hundreds of ETH mainnet whales to finally pay attention to us. If you have an idea around how to do that, let's do that. And I'm going to call out Cuppy here because months ago he talked about wanting to do this and I authorized. I said, we will vote this through. Here's your 60 grand. Go do it. Go pay these KOLs. Go do whatever you want to do. I have been somewhat facetious at times with respect to Cuppy because of their behavior in our Discord, in the private Discord, whatever. But I want to make it clear. This is an open call out. If you see something we're not doing and you want to run it, I'm willing to fund it.
Yep.
That has always been the case.
So
right.
So response there is that yeah, absolutely. And I get that it's going to be hard to you know, find those ways and copy the same people and get the new stuff. But I feel like just my sentiment, I have no idea about the back end and what's going on with you guys and outside of what I see. But it seems like we're ramming our head against, hey, we tried this, it didn't work. We tried this, it didn't work. Are we going out there? Are we talking to the communities who do have these people who are writing up all this stuff and maybe just asking them, hey, why do you do this? Why are you so involved? going to like I posted something the other day about our sales market cap for Zed Run. Do we go out and create a little bit of
I
buzz
saw that. I
by
retweeted that.
creating controversy in the market of getting some, even if we go attack whoever it is in a friendly, hey, like 20 million, you have 20 million followers, we have 10,000 followers, and we're doing better as an economy than you, type of thing, just to kind of get the buzz out there. I think, those are some strategies. I have a million more of things that, places we can go, things we can ask. I've been trying to get you guys on a Twitter space again with our, non-refundable network community, trying to get an airdrop. In terms of, I'm connected to a few people. I'm not saying I know a bunch of people, but I know a lot of the crypto degens who aren't necessarily huge gamers in guilds, but are in this space and who do have some kind of following, other connections. Like, I think we need to go maybe one step further than, hey, we tried this, it didn't work. Okay, like let's maybe pivot a little bit. Let's ask outside counsel, just for coaching and things like this. Find the people that are making this work, pick their brain, and not necessarily copy them, but maybe try and pull them away from the stuff that they're doing into ours. So I have a million ideas. I'm very happy to go over it all of marketing and things like this. And I know you guys are working very hard on everything in the game, but some of the things just seem like you spend so much time in certain areas, and other areas are just like, well, we don't know how it necessarily works, and we've tried a bunch of stuff, so like we're not gonna refocus and kind of focus on that. That's my only gripe, and I'll stop.
Let me ask you one last question. Were you here at the very beginning when I gave my update, or no? I wasn't paying attention to the crowd.
Yes. About the marketing.
Okay. Well, like yesterday, I fired our director of marketing. So I don't disagree with anything you've said to me. I have removed a person who was failing in the role. Yep. You have my DMs are always open. My Ella just reached out to me. She wants to one-on-one. We are open. Let's talk. Yep. If you have connections, you want to get me on a space, I've always been open to this kind of stuff. And so I don't want to come off resistant to everything you've said. I just want to make the point that we've tried a bunch of things. You're absolutely right that they're not working to inflect growth. We keep maintaining that straight line. It does mean we're growing because we churn players constantly. That's just natural after over 365 days of live operations, right? So it's a flat line. It doesn't mean we're not growing, but we're not inflecting. We need to inflect. We need to inflect quickly. I'm making changes internally. This is a primary focus for us, and I'm all ears. So everything you've said resonates with me. Let's continue the combo. And I am certainly willing to do anything within my power, whether it's go on these spaces, try some more degen tactics on the crypto Twitter front, try to pull people from other communities. The one thing I'm still a little resistant to is just throwing shots. Like, I would love to start to throw more shots at Illuvium. Like, how many damn Unreal Engine videos of water can you show your player base, your asset holder base, and get them to continue to just hopium believe that one day you're going to ship a game with a live economy, right? Like, how long can Axie delay land gameplay with a posting for a 4x strategy? Like, I can go out and be that person. I don't think it necessarily hurts or helps us. I don't think it helps us to be that way. Now, if all of you really think I should, maybe I should just pull the ripcord off and start being an asshole to everybody that's failing to try to pull people across. But I think the first step would be going out to people who are not paid influencers, but clearly supporters of projects that are not as sophisticated or fun as us, and look at pulling them in. I'm very, very interested in that. Success for us can really happen with 100 of the crypto NFT, ETH mainnet whales coming into the project, right? So if you have ideas, I'm all ears. I'd love to chat with you. All right?
Sounds good. I'll make a meeting, and thank you for having me up. Thank you for considering all the info. Cool. Thank you, and go see you.
Thank you.
Go see you. Thank you so much, Truth. Next up, we have Radam coming in to speak. Please come over. Hi.
Good morning, everybody. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Another
We're
day.
doing okay.
Another day. I love it. So awesome. With the new quest board stuff, I keep saying over and over again, and I'll fight with anybody in the channels. I don't care. I think this is a tremendously positive change, and I applaud the team. Especially with the different items that are given from participating in the game. Absolutely love that. I have several friends that are sitting on the sideline with tens and tens and tens of ETH ready to invest.
Yep.
But the question is runway. Looking at, I know there's financial reports coming out and all that, and I've watched several interviews where you've said that we have 2 years of runway, but there's a lot of argument, and I have a hard time researching this topic. So I was wondering if you could shed
Sure.
more light on your expectations.
Our current runway is through the end of next year, assuming we keep burn where it is at. Sorry, I'm looking at my budget spreadsheet to just confirm. Yeah, it's Q4 of 2024, right? The end of Q4 2024. So faced with that, understanding that we're nearing 3,000 ETH in the treasury and that runway accounts for the price of Ethereum currently, I'm bullish on that timeline and ultimately less and less concerned that about the price of ETH like maintaining or declining on that timeline. We don't start to need to spend any of that Ethereum until the end of June next year. So on that timeline, I'm just not concerned about our runway. It's very typical for startups to have 18 to 24 months worth of runway. And, you know, you're right. At the beginning of the year, we had 2 years, and now we're midway through the year and we have about 18 months. There's a number of ways that we could potentially descope things on the project and deploy resources elsewhere. I think right now I'm inclined to continue building against the roadmap, building the beachhead, and betting on a bull market beginning to occur within the next year. Do you have any follow-ups to that? But that's about, you know, that's the top level on, or the high level on runway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, trying to make it to the past the next halving cycle, I think is really the key, and they would all agree.
Oh yeah.
I think the follow-up question would be, all right, let's say it doesn't go the way we expect. What are the contingencies? Like, what can we do to try to extend that runway, say ETH crashes?
We would have to remove resources from this project and just reduce the amount of draw from the treasury quarterly. I mean, in a worst case scenario where the price of Ethereum is just tanking downwards, you know, that would be the solution on that front. You know, we do not benefit from, we being LG do not benefit from just draining the treasury and moving on, right? Like if we fail with this project, no one will fund the next one, right? So there's not really, despite what some fudders like to come in and complain about, there's really no incentive for us to do that. So the path forward would be a reallocation of resources. If I fail to have another project available or get funding for that project, because obviously we can't use CU treasury money for anything besides CU, it would mean needing to let people go, right? I will fight very hard to ensure that is not the case. But if we're talking worst case scenarios where the price of ETH tanks, a runway is down, and I fail to fundraise for Laguna Games so that we can begin to deploy resources to another project, that would be where we land. I'm certainly betting on the opposite to occur given the macro market and the timeline that we have.
Certainly. Next topic. I've been floating around talking to a bunch of different people over the last few weeks. And I'm really wondering, and John's actually hitting this in the chat right now, but about a player-to-player referral system that not only rewards a new player, but rewards existing players for bringing new people to the community.
Yes.
Something that's time released based on story quests, and when certain quests are achieved, not only does the referral, but the referee gets that reward. Because I think what I've read is it's about a $200 player acquisition cost. And every business on the planet, if you roll that into employee referrals, it's a higher ROI.
I guess two things on that. So we have been working on the affiliate program. This is just the space that we're in. I'll give you an example. So we've been working with this company, ShareMint. ShareMint is not doing well financially. So there is a question of whether or not their referral program is even, they're going to be able to support it. We got this other group called Spindle. I love Antonio. He and I have been on a couple of panels together. They're building a bunch of tech to make this possible. If there is another platform that y'all know of that you think we could deploy, we're all ears, because I'm so fucking tired of working with teams that fail before we can even deploy. So this has just been this mess. This is another reason that I made the decision yesterday to lay an individual off. We've been too accepting of the time that it has taken to deploy these things. So a referral program is something that we have been working on. ShareMint was the initial partner. We have concerns about whether or not they're really going to be the right partner. And it's something that, anyway, I'm 100% behind. I do think it is a growth avenue that we should try, because it not only gives us the ability to leverage the great corn drop to get free bundles out to people via the referral system, but it also kind of puts them into a program, an onboarding program that gives them incentives to not immediately flip the assets. And so to answer the other side of the question, because I see a lot of this around LTV, our average revenue per wallet, day 365. So if you take wallets that have been here 365 plus, it's $283, which is great, right? That is a very, very high LTV. And our cost per acquisition, it did start at 2,000. It's come down to below 100. So that's great. But the problem is we've not scaled those channels. We're talking $500 to maybe $1,000 a day in marketing spend. And so I cannot confidently say that we're just ready to open up the gates and scale, right? And one of the reasons we can't do that is some of the campaigns, these Glean campaigns on Facebook and stuff, they have a high flip rate. Some of them don't. Right? High flip rate's 40, 50%, where they don't even engage, they just flip. And honestly, I was a little surprised. I figured marketing to a bunch of people on Facebook who maybe had not been a part of the NFT wave, they wouldn't even know what OpenSea is, and apparently some of them do. And so it's one of those things where it's the referral program to me is a much better avenue, because it actually benefits y'all finding the right people, because if they progress, you'll get rewards, they get rewards, we get to hand bundles out to better players. So no resistance there. It is something we're actively working on. If you guys see other platforms besides ShareMint and Spindle, we're certainly down to evaluate them.
If I may follow up, and I'm just a little naive on the topic, why is it something that can't be handled internally? Or again, I might be
Our
naive.
team is busy enough. Our team is busy enough would be my response.
Sure. I guess that
truly, I'm not trying to be flippant, right? We have enough work on our plate. We need to work with attribution partners like a Spindle or a ShareMint, versus putting more work on the internal team. So that's the simple answer to it.
Sure. I guess my final question, and one of the other things that one of my investor friends brought up, is it seems like we're really spreading ourselves very thin. And you just mentioned that the design team or the development team's already working on enough. Specifically the thing that's brought up is the issue with the quest rewards showing up properly, and it's been something that's been an issue for months. And I'm not trying to be negative in any way, but at what point do you balance new growth versus using your time to allocate to repolish the existing products?
I mean, there are certain things that are unacceptable, and that's one of them. And I don't know what else to say. We continue to improve QA. Things continue to slip through. Potentially that is the spread too thin, and you can blame me on that. I very much believe in the ecosystem play relative to primary competitors in the space, right? And I want this ecosystem play as a differentiator and a proof point to the wider market and what we've been able to achieve. There are certain things that I'm certainly frustrated by, and that is one of those issues. And you have this compounding thing of waiting on delegations release and stuff where we pack a lot of features and bug fixes, and then inevitably that takes 2 months worth of work. And so here we are, right, with these issues and challenges. So ultimately you can blame me for pointing the team in so many directions simultaneously, but I do believe that the ecosystem play is one of the things that differentiates us, because lots of people talk about this and how many other teams have delivered on it, right? So it's a double-edged sword, but I am willing to bet, based on the improvement the team has already had in the last year, that will continue to get better and over the hump on these minor issues slipping through that still lead to quality of life problems for players. And I think the team recognizes that with the ship of delegation, we're likely to see a bunch of additional players begin to onboard. And we need to be very, very tight with this release. And so I can tell you the team is aware of that need and working very hard on it.
Perfect. And if I just might offer my last statement or kind of question. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think everyone in the community 100% agrees that new player growth is the priority. I think you've mentioned it here multiple times. With the current roadmap with tribes coming out, I think all of these ecosystem plays are phenomenal. But in my opinion, if it's not polished by the time the halving happens, that could be detrimental to the overall feel of crypto Twitter and just the rest of the crypto experience. So I guess I would wonder, like, with new projects such as like Team RPG, which the design team I don't believe is shifted to yet, would you put a higher priority on developing some type of referral system? Because to me personally, I don't see existing players the referral system doing much. I mean, what's $100? But to scholars, that's everything. And I just wonder if you would comment, like, moving forward, 6 months out, where would you put your value on those different types of time spent?
If we don't have a referral system within 60 days, we've failed. So that's the timeline on that, right? Like, ShareMint is ready to deploy. As I said before, we are concerned that they're going to shit the bed in the middle of that deployment. And of course, it will fall back on us, right? So other partners like Spindle are being evaluated. I've always embraced other partners. It is silly for us to build everything, and where there are tools like attribution and referral, we want to use other partners, right? But I could not agree more with the sentiment around we need to get this done. And you're talking about the happening next year. If we don't have these things in place in the next few months, the team, it is not lost on the team the moment that we are in what is necessary to succeed and what happens if we fail. So I want to make that really clear. So again, that's why I'm calling out, if there are other referral programs that we are not aware of, that I've not mentioned today, that you're aware of, like, let's talk to them, let's try to integrate them. Again, like, it's not just a code, it's not just a button we push, right? Like, ShareMint had to integrate the Moonstream API so that all the internal game data would flow into that system. And when whoever the referee is, achieves a certain milestone, like, that gets checked within the ShareMint system, and then the reward gets distributed, and all these kind of things, right? And so it takes setup. I'm obviously being very open about some of the challenges that we're having with some of our partners. It's not fun in this space when you have to rely on others, and obviously everyone's business is struggling right now. But it's not lost on us the importance of this, and I want to reinforce that the referral program is top of mind for the team, as well as this onboarding program, which will likely be a part of the same system given they leverage the same tech, so that new players kind of have this like milestone bonuses onboarding program to kind of help them out, help them over some of the early gates in the game.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. And again, I love this project. I think you guys are killing it. And ooh.
Ooh, woo. Really appreciate those questions. Thank you very much. It's all stuff that's top of mind for us.
Ooh, right back at you, Adam. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, we have, let us see, a couple more anonymous questions, but some of the questions here have already been answered. Let's shorten this one. In the card game update, how long is Tribes going to take? What are your plans for this until the end of 2023?
Minion Forge is imminent in production. The Dark Forest Act 2 will follow that. Tribes will follow that. There will be a V2.3 point release, which will have some quality of life improvements, bug fixes, and prepping some of the features that will ultimately go live in Tribes. There's a thing that I'm not going to steal Ziori's thunder. We're going to be announcing a new system that is a part of Tribes that effectively allows you to enhance unicorns that you currently have. I think that's going to be a very cool, imagine every unicorn has an infinity gauntlet. That's going to be a very cool system. Timeline wise, all of this stuff needs to land prior to the end of the year and as early as possible in Q4. And that's the timeline that I can give you today. But this is not something that can drag out into next year. We need to get Tribe shift. We need to begin some of the V2 plans for Tribes. We need to obviously begin working on the Team RPG stuff with an eye towards next year. So I know we get in this state where we have several months in between releases, and it just seems like, and this, we talk a lot about this internally, like time and time again, we just need to communicate more. This is always my fault for just not doing these more frequently, being in Discord more, not getting so upset at some of the keyboard warriors complaining. And every single time the community kind of gets in a bundle and gets frustrated or upset, I need to take a step back and assume, all right, in the absence of information, y'all assume that you're going to assume the worst. And I can't blame y'all because the space is full of frauds and full of rug pullers and full of bullshit. And so I get so frustrated at times seeing some of this, some of the discussion in Discord. And I need to recognize, like, many of you have been burned by other projects. The market is not in a good state, and we need to do a much better job of surfacing what is coming, what is in progress, what the timelines are. I can't tell you the number of times I've spoken with my co-founder about this. We have to get better on these things. Zaori is leading the charge from the product team's perspective in terms of these community reveals. Obviously, the jousting stuff has gone out this week. I would point to those as examples of us getting out ahead of releases, being very transparent with respect to what's coming. We've obviously announced and begun to tease the Shadowcorn stuff as we make changes to quests in the game. And so I hope people recognize that we're doing a much better job already on that front. And then there are a number of what we call community reveals that Zori is actively working on and are going to be a lot of fun to kind of put forward. That will include full details on the Minion Forge and a sneak peek at all the fun web work that's done. It's really looking very good. The Dark Forest Act 2 reveal, and then obviously Tribes, and as a part of Tribes, this really fun new system that I keep teasing that I think everybody's going to love because it's basically y'all's feedback. So expect more on that soon, and that will lead to clarity in terms of what our goals are for the end of the year. But with respect to Tribes and everything we've already talked about before Tribes, that is all happening this year. And the team, again, to the previous person's kind of questions and stuff, understands where we're at, understands what is necessary, and understands what happens if we fail.
All right. Okay, we have another question here. I'm also going to shorten it. The cost of tokens needed to fully breed a set of parents, so this is to use up all 8 of their breeding points, was over $100, with the old breeding cost and almost $140 with the new breeding adjustments. And this is without talking about the opportunity cost when token prices were still higher. Does the team still have a plan in place to actually make the full breeding the teams themselves pushed for worthwhile?
If I understand that question correctly, this is a complaint based on the current cost to breed. And then earlier today, I'm answering complaints around or concerns around the floor price. You can't have both. You cannot have both. Obviously, community members put forward a proposal that would reduce the overall number of new breeds coming out, given the increase in costs. Like, that was the expected thing. It happened. People complained about that because it reduced the overall sink. And so there's some merit to that. But if you go back to a lower sink and we're continually inflating the supply without demand, you're going to have the other problem. So I just really ask that everybody giving these kind of questions thinks about both sides, and it's always a seesaw. It's always a balance. We do one thing over here, it's going to change something over here. And you really have to open yourself up to the full intensity of that. That's not the right word. The full challenge of that problem space when you're asking these questions, right? So right now, I want supply to be balanced with demand, and we have very little demand. So I care most about demand right now, and far less about new supply coming online. So the increased cost and gate that exists today, I think I'm fine with. And obviously the price of Unum, the amount of Unum that exists, the cost of babies, like somebody coming in that really wants to accelerate progress, go buy a bunch of land on secondary, fill up those nurseries with babies and get cracking, right? You have to think about, what is the cost for a new player to come in? It's certainly come down a ton. What is the scale that we could achieve at certain prices and stuff? So I'm happy to answer if there's a follow-up from that specific person, but I don't have any plans right now to change what was previously voted by the DAO in terms of the breeding and Evo cost. One question that I'm seeing on the topic of onboarding, we are integrating Web3 Auth, which is a kind of white label wallet. That white label wallet is one click, use a social login to gem the wallet. It is still non-custodial. We do not hold the key. Your key is tied to your social login. Over time, you can actually turn that into a full crypto wallet without the social login connection. So that is already in progress by the team. As a part of Web3 Auth, we have multiple choices of fiat on-ramps. So the ability to use credit card to purchase the crypto assets becomes a part of that, or is a part or feature of that wallet. So that in and of itself is something that is planned. I personally think that it will be helpful, but the people we need right now are very, very familiar with wallets, right? We need the ETH mainnet whales. We need to signal to them that the water is fine. The economy is ready. Come on in, friends, right? And then having smoother on-ramps for the normies, I think is almost a secondary priority. I don't disagree with it being a good thing. I know many of you are trying to ramp people in that you personally know that are less familiar with this. And so it will certainly help. Web3 Auth is the name of the wallet. And it's a white label wallet that we can scan in our UI. And anyway, used by a bunch of projects, including, I believe, Sequence Wallet. So anyway, definitely some progress on that front. More questions, Sparkly.
All right, and just like
we've
that,
had some good ones today. We've had some good tough ones.
Definitely. And we have two more speakers here. Let's go. Ame, come on over to the stage, please. Hey.
Hi. Do you hear me well?
Yep.
Great. Well, I don't know if it's too hot topic, but like I wanted to pick your mind a bit on the QE thing. But like, first of all, I wanted to know a bit what was the idea when first designing it. I just want to understand a bit more around it, because how I saw it was like a core pillar of the economic system, but then it's removed, and then I realized that like it was a flat amount of the budget and all that. So I wanted to know a bit more about the whole thing.
Did you miss my opening intro, sir? I'll put this in chat because this is exactly what I said, so people could kind of. No, yeah. It's fine. It's fine. So I'll repeat it. I put it in chat here in the town hall chat, so everybody can kind of see it. Like the original purpose of QE was to twofold. One, to increase the liquidity of Unim, which we did, and remove Unim from supply. Now, I don't mean circulating on-chain supply. I mean from the players, right? And putting it into the LP pool. And so when we started, the Treasury owned 12% of the circulating supply of Unim at that time, which was about 18 million. And when we completed that, as of whenever it was, Tuesday or Wednesday, we have 48% of the supply at 110 million, right? So it has never been a core pillar or something that we plan to do forever. In other scenarios where our underlying crypto assets like ETH and stuff were spitting off more rewards, like there might be opportunities to continue it. I'm not necessarily opposed in the future to doing more of it, but like its intended purpose was, because the other option was I could have just minted a bunch of Unim and paired it with some USDC and put it in the pool. And instead of doing that, we chose to actually make an investment in the economy and buy it from our players. And I know there's people on both sides of the fence. Time will tell if it's right or not. Obviously, if Unim price maintains or increases with demand over time, like that's a good thing for the Treasury. So does that clarify your question?
Yeah, thanks. Because I was wondering why not that clarifies and answer in a way, but like I'd follow up with like but yeah, you kind of answer, because I was gonna ask if there's possibility of like redesigning it in a more sustainable way, in integral part of the economy. But you said that you would be open possibly. So yeah, I guess it answers the question. Thank you.
And again, I apologize for the way I announced that. You know, I am a human being and get frustrated at times seeing some of the discussion. And so I did kind of mic drop that, and it was not appropriate. And I do apologize. But cool. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Next up, we have Swiss. Come on over, please.
Hello, guys. Do you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. It's been probably a year since I've last raised my hand here, and I'm glad to see that you guys are still, all over the project. I really love coming back here into these, especially when Aaron is speaking, because it's always, I don't know, there is something about the way you present information that keeps me excited, not only about this project, but just about gaming in general in Web3, because there is no real other project, and I'm following quite a few. I'm participating in quite a few that where I haven't lost hope. But this one in particular, I think I'm just coming back to see how are you guys going to pivot to make this whole thing a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaging. And I'm a little bit on the older side community, so maybe things that are fun for others are not as fun for me, but I'm still waiting for that when it clicks for me. But I spent playing and farming for the past 2 years almost every day, and if it gets boring at times, I keep on doing it because I'm expecting something will eventually click. So just as a little bit of feedback, you guys keep on going, and I'm curious to see what the new thing will be in Web3 next year and over the next 24 months. And hopefully you guys will be able to pivot into that new trend as well. And maybe just as a small question on the side, and I don't know if I've totally missed something really important in the project, or maybe you have mentioned this in the beginning of this call, but what I missed is some sort of collectability value in the project. It seems like all of the assets are more of a commodity, and there is nothing really that you can collect, nothing really that is rare. And I think we're kind of missing something that is kind of a primary function of this previous bull market in NFTs, this sense of collecting and rarity. And what do you guys think about that? Or is this something that has been discussed many times over and I wasn't aware of it? I don't know if this makes sense.
No, it does, Swiss. First off, appreciate that you're still here. It's great to be chatting with you again. So it's always good to hear from OGs. I did kind of talk about this a little bit earlier, but this is one of those things where it's like we designed a system, particularly the unicorn system, right, where we knew supply would inflate over time, and we knew that the best breeders would be able to get high stack corns, mythics, and things of this nature, right? And so if you really think about rarity, like how many quad mythics do we have? It's a handful. We don't even have quad mythics for all the classes. We have one epic, shout out to Jibberson, mythic at this point. We have 0 legendaries. And so we created a system that forces you into the loop. But you're absolutely right. Like if you are not doing that loop, you're actually falling behind. And this runs very contrary to the NFT profile pick bull wave, which, I mean, I believed from the beginning was not going to be super sustainable. And I mean, it wasn't just me. I mean, so many people have said 99.9% of these projects are going to 0. And we're seeing a lot of that happen now. And everybody's panicked. It's like, well, okay. So you have to kind of take a step back and go, now, as a gaming project, how do we insert collectability? I would make the argument that getting to those high tier, high rarity mythics, right, which over time will dilute, but very, very slowly relative to farm corns, right, is an interesting system that I'm not ready to write off as like a failure just because it's different than what the first generation of unsustainable NFT profile pick projects and gaming projects did. Flip the script around, there are things that have super high rarity within our economy. Mythic land, obviously rare land, and then of course the shadow corns. And the shadow corn system itself, with only 3,000 of them, with only 50 rares or mythics, shadow corns, that's your, right? I mean, the only other gaming collection I think is smaller is like Digidaigoku, right, with their 2022 Genesis NFTs, which is the only NFT I've really ever dumped. See if I'll buy the bottom. So the shadow corn system, right, is very much designed for the people that want something that they know is not going to inflate in supply. And I really think that if you're into the more collection style of things, that you probably want to look at that system, where I hope on some level you see what we've done with the systems like unicorns that do inflate. Like, yes, the overall supply is inflating. Yes, over time, the floor price of farm corns or donkeys has gone down. But obviously the value of those quad mythics relative to the floor price is, a very large delta. So if you have follow-ups, I mean, you're asking a very good question. You're asking a question that's kind of like, what is the future of this space? And I think the future of the space is not 10K profile pick projects. I'm sure a few of them will survive based on brand and their ability to do live events and things like that. But with gaming projects specifically, and the need of a gaming project to scale the number of assets to get to a large number of players, you have to think about, well, what is the mechanism or system design that's going to make that work? And you need an ability to get more assets into more people's hands over time. but you also want to balance it. You can't just have infinite inflation, right? And that's where the Shadowcorn roadmap comes in, and unicorns dying in the forest, unicorns getting eaten by the Shadowcorns to ascend the Shadowcorns, like all of that kind of stuff will come together.
I see.
All
Aaron,
of that
maybe
stuff
just
needs to come together, I guess is my point.
thank you for going a little bit deeper on this. Maybe just one small tiny comment. I feel like when you are working on a game like this and you're dealing with lots of data and you're trying to scale, you really get into this mindset of looking at this whole thing as a commodity, and you're talking about rarity and about supply and inflation most of the time. But I think we also need not to lose sight of the fact that we need unreasonable people to come in and stay for the fun of it. And it's, I think, very difficult to design a mechanic that can deliver on that. And I think there was some sort of concept in the very beginning of this project where you created some kind of strange unicorns that were extremely rare and different in design and didn't necessarily have a function in game. So there was this initial idea that was born, but I've never heard back on what happened to that. I feel like people could have a lot of fun collecting these weird kind of unicorns, having an ability to create one, to have something extraordinary. I think this could be a driver to get people to learn about the project, because I think it's, yeah, I don't know if I was just always looking, what is the mechanic to make something addictive and fun? And this is probably one of the biggest challenges in this space. And this was just to try to influence your way of thinking, because I think you guys are into numbers, into inflation, into supply, and maybe this is of any help. Maybe tonight somehow an idea will spark inside your mind after this conversation, Aaron. But much appreciated that you explain a little bit the thought process behind what's currently being put together.
Swiss, I'd love for you to check out Bumper Corns, which we launched recently. It's a very kind of fun, quick to pick up, game. Obviously, Rainbow Rumble, which will launch before year end, is Fall Guys meets Wipeout meets Unicorns. It's going to be kind of a ridiculous amount of fun that is, skill based. If you've played Fall Guys, it's a very hard game. It does take a lot of skill. We're putting a nice unicorn spin on it and burn cards you can kind of activate Mario Kart style. And so there's some really cool stuff happening there. You've got, Bumper Corns, which is just a casual mobile title, right? But those scale very well, right? So we've kind of got that plan. We got Mob Run coming out. And then, of course, the Team RPG test, which it sounds like you might have missed. The Team RPG test was a lot of fun. I think on both sides, both concepts were interesting. Again, they were prototypes too. And we saw pretty phenomenal engagement with respect to those. And I was very happy to see the match 3 Team RPG win. And so when you're talking about like loops that are, fun from the perspective of repeatable gameplay, like those are the loops that work. The farm sim, which is being shifted into this land gameplay, strategic, cooperative kind of PvP style of game, like that's going to be fun for certain people. It will not be fun for necessarily, everyone. And then the notes on collectability and things like the 1-of-1 unicorns, we've actually got no one's unicorn in the damn game. We just have not yet launched that feature. And no one won the first competition, and so he has the first 1-of-1 corn. And I was trying to go after a bunch of brand partnerships, but when the space collapsed, it was impossible to get like Supreme or these other brands to even really talk to us, right? And so that's a system that I'll own. That taking forever to put forward, but I don't disagree. We want artifacts within the overall economy that have collectability, that have rarity, that have stuff that's great. So that's one side of the thing. And then yes, the other piece too is like really check out some of the skill-based loops that we're putting out, right? Because that is definitely the attempt to bring in skill-based gameplay that is repeatable, engaging, and fun. As always, Swiss, thank you so much for coming up. Appreciate the continued support.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much, Swiss. We appreciate your time. Next up, we have Goliath Thrills requesting to speak. Come on over, please.
Hey everybody. So hey, I
Hey,
just want to
Goliath.
thank you all for the great work that you've done on the game recently. I gotta say that I'm definitely big into quests now. I wasn't when I first started playing. I guess I didn't get so much into quests. I was doing the breeding thing and that was a good little exercise in basically getting my corns up in that. And I do have to say that I agree with Aaron that the price differentiation between where we were and where we're at is something that we shouldn't necessarily be concerned with. I mean, I'm a new player. I'm new into this. Yeah, sure, you might need to grind a little more basically to get to breeding, but if you stop taking the actual money out of it, like in the end, and just take the playtime into account, it's just a little more playtime, but in the end, you could still breed, and I'm still breeding now, without actually, loading a bunch more money into the thing and that. I mean, granted, I did buy a lot, and I'm loaded into it. But yeah, I think we're balanced out right now for where we're at in the space. I mean, it's going to take time to evolve and that kind of stuff. So that's my 2 cents. But the question that I had was, so we talk about these PFP projects from the past, and people keep tying in PFP projects into trying to compare them to game projects, which they're not. I mean, they're art. And so art differentiates itself from games in the sense that it doesn't have a functional component to it. I mean, it's pretty, you look at it, it does its thing. Having a PFP is the same equivalent in my mind. So how do we as a community, as an industry, start to differentiate ourselves from the use of NFTs in games? I mean, what's the dynamic to basically make that happen? I think I sort of know the answer, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
I mean, it's disappointing that some of the first games to really activate and scale ultimately collapsed, right? Because they were there during the same initial profile pick wave that occurred. And like I was saying earlier, most of the profile pick projects, whether it's Bored Ape Yacht Club or Azuki or whatever, they're clearly pivoting towards games because they've all realized, like, okay, there's only so much you can do with this static JPEG, right? And so, go into the other side and, we're going to have this big world and stuff. And I think the answer that they don't have is, well, holy shit, you only have 10,000 of these Bored Apes. Like, what else? And I understand there's other collections and things like that, but it is not, when we're talking about game scale in terms of successful games, right? Especially mobile games, we're talking like millions and millions of players, right? And I don't think any of the profile pick projects have an answer for how they scale to that, beyond the idea that maybe they're going to have free to play, and like, why the hell is somebody going to come into the other side and play for free? If the Bored Ape is necessary to like get to the fun content. Like, I don't personally see how this is going to come together or work. And there may be 10,000 profile pick projects, but we all know how many holders they have. It's certainly less than that, right? So it's just interesting. I don't think the profile pick projects have an answer for how they're going to really scale, unless they're just going to try to go pure free to play and drive brand awareness and just hope that puts enough demand against that fixed supply to like keep it, going. But then there's all these questions around royalties and how are they going to fund themselves over time and stuff. And so how we differentiate for them is a bit of a struggle. I think we just have to lean into the gaming aspects, lean into the ecosystem side of things. And again, the slogan I keep throwing up there is kind of embrace the degen. I kind of want to lean into more of the shadow corn side of things. I want to be a lot more edgy with our presentation. I don't know if we want to poke certain projects in the eye yet, as I stated earlier, but I'm certainly not opposed to being a little bit more aggressive in trying to call out how we are different, what we've achieved relative to other projects in the space. The Azuki stuff was just madness to me. I was blown away by the fact that they could mint out and raise 30 million in ETH, that's a little bit depressing if I'm just being perfectly honest. Like, why did we set the bar so damn high, right? We should just be out here selling profile pics, right? But then I say something like that, I'm like, that is not going to sustain. That is not going to work, over the long time. What will work? What will sustain? Well, an economy around a shared community-owned IP, driven and cycled basically via these game loops, right? And so that brings me back to what I said earlier, like the ecosystem play, leaning into the game loops, leaning into what we actually have live and what we've built, which is very different from, a pure kind of profile pic project, or even those that are trying to kind of pivot into gaming. And I really think it's much harder to pivot from being, a PFP project into being a game developer. This is just coming from, having been in this brutal industry for a very long time now. It's very, very tough, right? But you're seeing like Cool Cats recently announced their ecosystem. Oh, surprise, surprise. It's an ecosystem of a couple of games, several Animoca-esque developers, and some of them look pretty fun. And so again, I think they're taking that path of pure kind of free to play. Maybe they'll release sub collections that allow people to actually acquire real NFT assets beyond that initial 10K profile pic project. But I really don't see a path for those. I think those projects have locked themselves in with the limited mint structure that they did, and they're really going to struggle to scale, because I think people want ownership. They want assets in wallets over time. And they're, why go and try to compete with free to play, right? When asset ownership has, many, many, many benefits over Web2 gaming, right? So any follow-ups to that, Goliath? I mean, you're asking a very kind of broad question about the industry and where we're at, but
no, I think that's good. But I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, I started off trying to mess around with some of the PFP projects way back a long time ago, and the reality is that they're all flash in the pan, right? I mean, it's basically you get in, you get the hype basically dies out. Eventually, if they don't have functionality, people are holding on to stuff, assuming that they're rare, and they're like, rarity means value. Well, no, it doesn't. Rarity doesn't mean value. Rarity is only value in the eye of the beholder. I mean, at the end of the day, whereas functionality in games has value if the game is fun, if the game basically is engaging at the end. And that's kind of like where I like to see the game space go, which is that it's about having fun, enjoying, seeing where you could take it, playing the game out, and finding the game in the game, right? Because there's a lot of games in the game in the crypto unicorn space, and different ways of slicing it. I think that's where the enjoyment comes. So I think that said, I think that we're differentiating ourselves slowly from the PFPs. It's just that unfortunately you have people coming in with the mentality that well, there should only be 1,000 of these, and that should be the end of the story. And it's not the case. I mean, this is a completely different ecosystem in terms of the use of the tools. Is kind of where I take it. But
yeah, and like this brings up the whole Shadowcorn thing. I've been seeing some of the feedback as we've announced like the beginning of that arc, right? Where once the Minion Forge is launched, we're going to begin taking the rewards that have been nerfed from land gameplay and passing a large chunk of that to the finite group of Shadowcorn holders. And I've said this from the beginning, like I will never do something where it's just holding a thing in a wallet and you're getting an airdrop, right? Like we did that early on before the game was launched. But a thesis that I have is you have to create a system that forces some effort and engagement. Otherwise, what are you really doing here, right? So with Minion Forge, it is largely passive gameplay relative to managing 16 land plots, right? But those who go in and engage with the Minion Forge, right, are going to get more minions. That's going to give them a higher power level. They're going to rank on that leaderboard higher, and they're going to get a larger pro rata share of the rewards flowing to the Shadowcorn holders. Yes, somebody with a ton of Shadowcorns to start that just wants to stake them all in and kind of sit on that, like great, but your share of the rewards, just like with SRBW, if you're not constantly restaking and others are, is going to go down. And you can get upset about that, but I hope people kind of more broadly begin to understand, like, we put these systems in place, and I've always been very clear about, you need to put some work in, right? Like, the most sustainable cryptocurrencies to date in the space have proof of work, proof of stake, these things where over time it gets harder to achieve certain things. It brings up, like, and this is me starting to spiral, it's like this constant unim nerf stuff that we always get a lot of flack for. I wish in the beginning we had just codified the monetary policy into the smart contracts. In the future with new projects, I will do a much better job at the mechanism design level to avoid us needing to sit in the center and be the central bank. I hate that aspect of things. I wish people would understand a little bit more around, hey, we can't just continually inflate the supply of that thing without demand. Like, we have to make certain changes to try to balance the economy. And I wish early on we'd just been like, hey, we're actually going to do these halvenings, or we're going to do, there are certain mechanism design we could have put in place there. And with Shadowcorns kind of finally coming online, again, it's way more passive gameplay than the farm and land gameplay is, right? But it still forces you to make choices to do certain things, like what type of minions are you going to produce? Are you going to, based on the classes that you have. Specialization of Shadowcorn certainly matters because it leads to different types of minions, your ability to create higher tiers of minions and rank on the power leaderboard. But that system, I'm not just going to sit and throw pro rata to the 3K holders. I'm going to throw it pro rata to the power score of those holders, which of course, per the Medium blog post, is the number of Shadowcorns you have, their rarity, and of course your participation in the forge and your forging of the minion army, right? So anybody expecting something for nothing, you can't build sustainable economic systems around that. I really want people to understand that. Even if you disagree with our implementation, I would hope you understand that. So anyway, sorry to bring that whole thing in, but I've been observing a lot of that conversation, and it might be time to have a Shadowcorn holder only real talk AMA or town hall here in a bit.
It would be good, yeah. I think so. I mean, I own a few, and I like the sense that basically if you own them, and sure, you may not, maybe you don't have a ultra rare one and stuff like that, but you could still make up for it by actual playing and participating and stuff like that. So that's, sometimes hard work.
You have to be able to, yes.
Yes,
you have to be able to balance somebody coming in and spending a lot of money and somebody spending a lot of their time. And in free to play, it's all about balancing the time for money, right? And that's not necessarily changed in our world. It's just gotten a lot harder because the agency that y'all have as players to do what you want with these assets, right? And so that's the benefit of the space. It's the beautiful thing of the space, but it also makes it a very complex equation, right? Like, at the end of the day, I've bred some corns. I'm up to 120, right? But like, where did the 150,000 come from? Like, y'all and y'all's choices around this kind of stuff, right? So it's one of those things where it's very interesting. It's a very challenging problem to solve, but it's something that, again, the Shadowcorn arc is incredibly important from the perspective of how we kind of keep this system balanced and on the rails. And then with demand, and I think everybody sees this, I don't think anybody disagrees with this, like with demand, we have the deepest, broadest economy in the space, the most complex economy in the space. We're the furthest along in delivering an ecosystem of games on top of that kind of core foundational land gameplay that we have. And that's what gives me a lot of hope, like even in this market. And I'm just now coming to realize that XRP is not a security. Oh my God, that is actually really surprising. I need to call our lawyer because he didn't think that was going to be possible. That's huge. That is a huge win. For people who've not been following that, that is the biggest possible win we could have had in the space today. That is a massive win. Sorry, Goliath. I'm just catching up on that news. That is
there's a lot of
Massive
good
win
news.
after 3-4 years of lawsuits. Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot of good news that's coming out the last week or so, and I think that
Yeah.
hopefully these types of things basically kind of change the rest of the year is what I'm hoping for. So, but the last question I had, and then I'll hand it off, is that um, and I don't know if you're going to want to answer this, but I keep trying to
Hit me.
explain potentially what Shadowcorns might sort of be looking like. Like if you own Shadowcorns and you own Unicorns, what might the interaction between the two look like? And I was thinking, based upon the slide deck, it sort of looks like there's maybe like an auto battler RPS type aspect to it, or RTS, real time strategy type thing to it, maybe. Maybe
Mhm.
there's like little characters moving around on a board and they beat each other up, and then, somebody gets to win and somebody loses type thing. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's kind of what I got off the slide deck, and I just didn't know if you wanted to give any alpha on that or anything like that. So.
I can give a little bit. The Battle for the Dark Forest is the first time minions and corns are going to meet. The Shadow Corns, are in the forge producing the minions. They send them into the Dark Forest, right? The Shadow Corns are not going to belittle themselves by fighting the battle themselves. And so within the Battle for the Dark Forest, there will be the ability to select a zone that you're targeting. There's different zones that need to be kind of captured and controlled by either side to earn the Dominion points that you're attempting to get over the course of the event. Obviously, the longer the Shadow Corns maintain control of the forest, the longer they get that share of the nerfed land gameplay unum, as well as the other rewards that are in the Dark Forest as a part of this system. And so from the unicorn side from the Shadowcorn side of things, it's all about sending out these minion squads into the various regions of the forest and reacting to the unicorns getting sent into the forest itself, these unicorn squads. And so as far as the visualization goes, we're still figuring out what's going to be possible in the web browser. As a matter of fact, Matthew, our web lead, pinged me on Slack 10 minutes ago about our meeting on this. You'll be able to select, a region from the unicorn side and say, okay, here are some available minion squads. I'm going to re-roll. I don't like these 3 squads. I'm going to re-roll. I think that costs a little bit of RBW if you want to do that. That's going to enable you to pick a minion squad to attack. You're right. There will be some kind of tabletop simple animation of that battle playing out. And ultimately the result being delivered, right? You either defeat the minion squad or you didn't. And of course, what you're doing at a micro level is then coming back up to the macro of who is actually in control of this region. And the event is all about ultimately, can the unicorns overwhelm the minion squads that are there? And I think the way the event will balance is just the fact that the finite number of Shadowcorns, right? We just know there's only going to be a limited number of participation. I think we have to understand that right now there's a decent overlap, given we only have 10K asset holders between those with Shadowcorns and unicorns. Over time, as we scale, that becomes a smaller and smaller group of people relative to the other side. So again, Zori's working on the kind of next big community reveal that will give a lot more of these kind of details, but that's a little bit of, you've been able to drag a little bit of alpha out of me here at the end, Goliath.
No, I mean that sounds really fun. I mean, even just visualizing in my head what it might look like. I mean, obviously we don't know what you all have, concocted, but I can picture something in my head, and I think that's good. It sounds super fun. So hey, thanks for that. I appreciate it. And
I think it will be the amount of psyops that's going to occur in Discord as people on both sides of the fence try to fake people out is going to be kind of intense. And that, to me, that social gameplay is really a part of it. And we fully expect there's likely going to be some emergent gameplay as y'all inevitably try to break everything we've built. But it'll be very, very fun, I think. And the idea is to create this repeatable cyclical event which naturally occurs. Ultimately, unicorns will overwhelm the forest. There's just too many of them. And the act will end, and then we'll reset it once the Minion Forge collectively has produced enough minions. And so it's going to be this kind of ongoing event. One of the design ideals behind it was repeatable live ops event content. And again, this begins this kind of eternal conflict that scales even further with the launch of Tribes and the raids feature that will follow the Tribes launch. So a lot of exciting things. We pitched all of this in April. It's been a few months. The team has been heads down. Again, I kind of come back to we go through cycles where we don't put enough information out there, and the assumption is always that we're on the beach just dumping treasury funds into the ocean, and that is like the furthest thing from the truth that I could possibly imagine. And so to counter this, we need to do a much better job of getting information out into people's hands so that there's just not speculation. And I think we have this mantra internally now of, in the absence of information, y'all are going to automatically assume the worst, and we need to stop being upset about that, recognize the space that we're in, and do a much better job of getting information out on these things. So again, I appreciate the patience and very excited for all of these upcoming community reveals.
Okay, thank you. And hey, I look forward to the new pretty websites that you're going to add, or web pages you're going to add to stuff. I know you had talked about that, so look forward to seeing that content. So thanks for having me up.
Yeah, the new Minion Forge website is a huge shout out to our web team. It's very sweet. Awesome. Sparkly, I think we did it today.
We definitely did it. We done did it to him. This was the town hall to end all town halls. That concludes our town hall number 41. Thank you so much to everybody for participating. Any questions that are remaining, I will put that on the thread and we will answer it later. We'll see you next time for the bi-weekly town hall number 42, this time with members of the internal team. We'll post a recording of this on our socials if you would like to give it a real listen. Don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow unicorn fam who couldn't make it. And if you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out in our support channels, the Mod Support channel and the Ask the Devs channel. This has been Sparkly Unicorn with Witty on Tech, hosting co-founder and CEO Aaron. Morning, good night, and see you in game, Unicorn fam. Ubu.